Hey everybody, what is going on? Hexlex here with some more Master Duel for you. You see I've got a different deck here for you today. Yeah, we are going to be looking at this deck I've just recently built, Adamancipator, and I am really excited to get into this one. I've had my eye on this deck for a little while now. I think towards the end of Season 2 I was starting to look at the list because I was starting to think about new decks I possibly wanted to build, and I like to spend my Ultra Craft points very economically if possible, right? So what I mean by that is I like to craft ultra rare cards that I know I'm going to use for multiple decks. Ideally current decks, but also I like to make staples that I know I'll use in the future. So Adamancipator, for this deck I had to craft I believe 6 ultra rares I didn't have already. I already had the Seas and the Ashes and the Nibirus and stuff, but I had to craft the Dragon Buster Sword, the Borreload Savage, the Adamancipator Risen. I did not have IP Masquerena, Union Carrier, or a Nightmare Unicorn, believe it or not. Those were the other 3. I did not have any of those 3 cards, but these 3 obviously see play in a lot of different decks, as does Borreload Savage Dragon, and really Dragon Buster Destruction Sword, rather, that's a mouthful, can be used in a lot of decks with Union Carriers. So, like, between those 5 Ultra Rares, like, really that just leaves the Adamancipator Risen as the only kind of, like, you know, like, generic one, so to speak. Or not generic, the opposite, archetype-specific one. So, since the other 5 were more generic, I was like, you know what, I want to play this deck, and I can justify using these Ultra Rares in other decks, so, yeah, why not? I decided to go all in and build this Adamancipator deck, and I'm very glad I did. It is an extremely fun deck. I'm definitely still getting the hang of it, but I wanted to share my build with you guys and show you some example games. And possibly coming up, I'll show you kind of how I try to like look for combos in this deck. I know the combos in this deck can seem very daunting, right? Especially the first time you play against Adamancipator, you see how much stuff they're doing, and it's like, what are all these combos? Like, how could you possibly memorize all this? Well, in the near future, the very near future, we'll be looking out for a video that will kind of go over how to kind of look for those plays. But in the meantime, we'll just go over the deck list itself real quick here. We're running 1 copy of Dragon Buster Destruction Sword. I've got 2 Tenyi Spirit Adahara, 3 Maxx, 1 Mecha Phantom Beast O-Lion, 2 Doki Doki, 1 Prank-Kids Dropsies, 3 Adamancipator Seeker, 3 Adamancipator Researcher, 3 Ash Blossom, 1 Gigantes, 3 Koa'ki Meiru Guardian, 3 Prank-Kids Rocksies, 3 Adamancipator Analyzer, 3 Koa'ki Meiru Supplier, 3 Block Dragon, 2 Nibiru, and 3 Sekka's Light. For the extra deck, we've got a Herald of the Arc Light, an Adamancipator Risen Raptite, we got a Borreload Savage Dragon, Adamancipator Risen Dragite as well. Gallant Granite is going to be our only Exceed monster. For links, we've got a Link Spider, Prank-Kids Meow Meow Moo, Crystron, Halkifbrax, Nightmare Phoenix, we've got Prank-Kids Dodo Doodle Doo, we've got an IP Masquerena, a Union Carrier, a Nightmare Unicorn, as I mentioned earlier, as well as Appalachia and Access Code Talker. So let's talk a little bit about this deck and how it works. If you look at it just on paper, it can be a bit daunting to try to figure out, okay, how do all these cards fit together and what do the end results look like? Basically, in a perfect world where we can set up a board that's got, 5 negates, and it can also shut down the opponent from summoning from the extra deck. Those negates being 3 Material Appalachia for 3 monster negates, a Dragite for the Spell Trap card negate, Borreload for the Omni negate, and then ideally we'll use Union Carrier to set up the Dragon Buster Sword on the Borreload, so that way they can't special summon from the extra deck. Oh, the ideal setup also has an IP Masquerena on the board, so that way you can link that with Union Carrier on your opponent's turn to go into Nightmare Unicorn to shuffle something into your opponent's deck during their turn as a disruption effect. So that is quite the board to end on. Again, that's like the ideal board. That's like the absolute best case scenario board. We're often not getting that because we live in a world where hand traps are very much a thing, and unless your opponent just has absolutely no hand traps at all, if they have pretty much any kind of disruption, they can probably break up at least some amount of the board, but you'll still be able to end on a lot of negates, and if you're going second, it's not hard to get like far more than enough damage for a win, even if your opponent like throws a hand trap or two in. So yeah, the Dragon Buster Sword is for equipping to Borreload, specifically with Union Carrier. That's literally all it's here for. It might seem like, oh, do I really need to craft this? I mean, it's an ultra rare, and it seems like it's, you know, it looks like it might be optional, but it's really not. It's definitely like needed for the ideal setup here. Again, that's an Omni Negate that prevents your opponent from summoning from the extra deck. That's extremely powerful. Oh, and also when equipped with the Dragon Buster Sword and like a Prank-Kids, the Borreload Savage ends up with 5,000 attack points, which is also nice. Tenyi Spirit Adahara, this is more of just a play starter. If you control no effect monsters, for us that's pretty much just going to be if you control no monsters, you can special summon it. It's a tuner, so it's good for going into Halkif-Brax, which is going to be one of the earlier plays you do, earlier as in like earlier in your turn, like throughout your whole combos, because really your one turn is going to last quite a while. So yeah, Halkif-Brax is a play you want to do like towards the start of the turn, so Tenyi is really good, or the Adahara is really good for that. Maxx, along with Ash and Nibiru, are just our pretty, you know, standard hand traps, right? Just in case we have to go second, we want to have something to be able to disrupt our opponent. O-Lion, you're exclusively going to get with the Crystron here, and you're going to use it mostly to synchro. You can use it to link summon as well, potentially to go into like Appalachia, but you're mostly going to try to use it to synchro either into the Raptite or sync with the Raptite into a Borreload or a Dragite. The token itself you're going to want to send away for Link Spider, and the reason we want to do that is that Link Spider provides another Earth monster, which can be used for Block Dragon, or it can be used potentially to make a Union Carrier, since Union Carrier needs monsters with the same type or attribute, and Link Spider's Earth. A lot of our cards are Earth, so the token from O-Lion, you're pretty much always going to want to turn into a Link Spider. Doki Doki, I've got 2 copies. I've kind of been considering a third because it is actually a pretty nice starter card if you don't get one of your Adamancipator monsters, but it is also very susceptible to hand traps because it discards as a cost, so if your opponent's got an Ash negate it or responds with a C, you're kind of committed in doing that. But it's still a very nice card. It's nice to hit off an Adamancipator, and it can be used, like I said, as a potential starter as well. Just don't rely on it as one, really. So the Prank-Kids engine, well, let's go into the Adamancipators themselves, right? We haven't even gotten into the stars of the show. So these are going to be your main combo starters: Adamancipator Seeker, Adamancipator Researcher, and Adamancipator Analyzer. They all have an effect that can, they all have an effect that can summon themselves from the hand. Analyzer does it if your opponent has a monster. Seeker does it if you have an Adamancipator monster. Researcher is the easiest one to proc. It's just if you control a rock monster, which obviously we have a lot of these in the deck. So yeah, and they all have the ability to excavate the top 5 cards of your deck, and you can special summon an excavated level 4 lower non-tuner rock monster, and that's going to be the main way you're going to get your plays started up there. They're also all tuners, which is very important for going into your synchro plays, since you're always going to want to go into Borreload, and also go into Dragite if you can as well. So yeah, moving on to the Prank-Kids, as I was saying, the Prank-Kids engine is very, very good in this deck. So the main thing that we're going to do with it is, like, most of the time if we summon, let's say we use one of our Adamancipators to excavate and we drop a Rocksies onto the board. Rather than just synchroing right away, what we can do is we can link the Rocksies into our Meow Meow Moo. Rocksies' effect will activate. We banish a card from our hand, draw a new card, which is very nice if we have like an extra hand trap or an extra card we just don't need. We can cycle it for a potentially more useful card. And then we can special summon Dropsies to the board. So now we have Meow Meow Moo and Dropsies on the board. We can link those away for Prank-Kid Dodo Doodle Doo, and the Dropsies will activate, and we can summon a Rocksies from our deck. So we're right back where we started, but we also got an extra Link 2 on the board, which is very handy for going into Appalachia, and also just for generally being a good Link material. So that's the power of the Prank-Kids engine, really. It's just a free Link 2 whenever you summon Rocksies. So very, very nice to have. Also, if you need to, you can use Dropsies as a level 2 for synchroing, or for, for synchroing, yeah. If you need to go, like, with an Analyzer into a Raptite, or if you want to go into Herald of Arc Light, this can be a level 2 that you could potentially use for that as well. Gigantes is actually a very important combo piece. It's a good extender, and we often search it with Block Dragon here. And like I said, it's just a good extender. It's a free special summon, which is very, very useful. It's a level 4 non-tuner for potential synchro plays, can set up some blink plays, etc., etc. Koa'ki Meiru Guardian, extremely, extremely important card in this deck. This early game, which I mean early game, quote-unquote, is going to be like the beginning of our combo, like turn. But Koa'ki Meiru Guardian is a good early negate. For before we set up Appalachia. It's pretty easy to get out. You can just like normal summon it if it's in your hand, and then special summon like a Researcher or something, or if it's your opponent going first, you can like special an Analyzer and then normal summon a Guardian. You can also excavate it off of one of these. You can also summon it off Doki Doki. But by having it up, we can guarantee that our early combos are not stopped by something like a Nibiru or an Ash, or even if you're able to normal summon this first, even something like a Maxx. You can use Koa'ki Meiru Guardian to potentially prevent that, which again is going to be very, very important. You're going to see that illustrated a couple of times in the games we've got coming up here. Koa'ki Meiru Supplier is a nice extender. If a rock monster is sent to the graveyard for any reason, we can special it from our hand, so that's always really nice. And when it's sent from the hand when it's sent to the graveyard, we can add basically just the Koa'ki Meiru Guardian for our deck to our hand, which is okay. That search usually doesn't really come up that often, because most of the time that we're sending Supplier away, we've probably already used our normal summon, or we're already in a situation where you either have a Guardian up already or an Appalachia up already, but it's still nice to have, potential discard for Doki Doki or something like that. So, there are other extenders you can use instead of Supplier. Supplier is generally one of the more popular ones. For this build, this initial build that I'm doing, I kind of went for like some of the more popular cards. Similarly, Adahara is not in every Adamancipator build. Some builds play 1, some play 0, some use other different extenders, but I'm just testing this build out, seeing how I like it, and then we'll go into potential other options once I'm more familiar with the deck. One of the last cards we haven't talked about yet is actually kind of the star of this here show. It's Block Dragon. This is pretty much the main reason this deck is so powerful. It is powerful in its own right, don't get me wrong, but Block Dragon is very, very strong. It's going to be the thing you pretty much always search off of Gallant Granite. In fact, if you don't already have a Block Dragon in your early plays, you're going to want to try to go into Gallant Granite to search Block Dragon. And basically what you're going to want to do is you want to use some of your early plays to go into a Synchro or like a Link, and then go into Block Dragon by banishing stuff from your graveyard. Summon this, then link it away, probably into Appalachia most of the time. You'll link it away, and then you can use this other effect down here to add up to 3 rock monsters from your deck to your hand, whose total level equals 8. Going to be extremely powerful. Most of the time you're going to get Gigantes, plus Researcher, plus Seeker. If you already have a Gigantes, you can get Supplier instead. Or if you already have like one of the tuners, you could potentially get a Doki Doki instead. But no matter what you end up adding, this is going to extend your plays very, very, very far. Just by summoning this for free, even by adding Gigantes, Researcher, and Seeker, even if you have nothing else on board and your board is wiped, you can banish an Earth from Grave, summon Gigantes, then special the Researcher because you control a rock, and then special the Seeker because you control an Adamancipator, and then you can just start going off from there. Even if you've already used these excavations early in your turn, that by itself is a level 8 Synchro monster, which is obviously a very powerful play. So, Block Dragon, very, very good. You can also, the searching is once per turn, but note that the special summoning it is not. So you can use this to link away and get the searches, and then at the end of your combo, at the end of your turn, you can just banish 3 more rocks and summon this out for more damage or more protection on board. It's so stupid. This card is so ridiculous. It's at 1, or is it banned? I think it's banned actually in the TCG, or it's at 1. It's one of the two, I don't remember. But the main reason I think it's still at 3 here in Master Duel is mostly because of good old Maxx here. Because Maxx does a really good job of keeping Adamancipators in check. Maxx being a very, very, very powerful hand trap against this deck. So I think that's why Block Dragon is still at 3. Final 3 cards in our deck are going to be 3 Sekka's Light, which is You know, obviously good because we don't play very many spell cards in this deck anyway, so it's a good extender to draw into some more cards. We do get some bricky hands sometimes with this deck, so the Sekka's Light is good. The cycling is also good if we draw one of our, like, one of our brick cards. Garnets, that's the word I'm looking for. You know, Garnet being a card you want in your deck, but never in your hand. So we can use the second effect of Sekka's Light to potentially put back, like, a Buster Dragon Sword or a Dropsies or something. Extra deck Herald of Arc Light is a good extra negate if you can make it, usually with a level 2 tuner and then like a Doki Doki or a Dropsies. It comes up occasionally, so it's kind of like, its spot is one of like the flex extra deck spots, so it's about one of the only ones in my opinion, but yep, I'm opting for that. The Raptite is a level 6 Synchro. It's got a similar excavation and then summon effect as the other Adamancipator monsters do, although it can summon any rock, so it can summon another tuner, one of these other Adamancipator cards. Important to note, and also makes it a little bit better there. The Dragite, it excavates, but it bounces cards on your opponent's board. When it excavates, it doesn't extend your board, it just answers your opponent. It's pretty good for going second, but still good for going first again because it can negate a spell or trap effect. You do have to have a water monster in grave in order to do so. That's going to most of the time either be Dropsies and or the Halcliffe Rex. So just make sure you have one of those in grave before you go into Dragite. Not too hard to do though. Borreload, as I mentioned, obviously we're going to want to be equipping this with Dragon Buster Sword and then one of our Link 2s to set up an Omni Negate that can also prevent the opponent from summoning from the extra deck. Gallant Granite, like I mentioned, main function is to search Block Dragon. Link Spider is for the O-Lion token. We know the Prank-Kids cards already for the Prank-Kids, Halclifax. Nightmare Phoenix sometimes comes up as good spell trap removal, or just a generic Link 2 if you need to go into one for a combo. IP Masquerena, this is typically, if you can, you're going to want to go into this at the end of the combo, and then during your opponent's turn, like I mentioned earlier, you can use Masquerena and Union Carrier to go into a Nightmare Unicorn for disruption on your opponent's turn. Note that Union Carrier can't be used as a Link material during the turn it's Link summoned, so you're going to have to do it during your opponent's turn with the Nightmare Unicorn there. And then the Appalachia and Access Code Talker are just good generic Link 4s. Appalachia is more of like a turn 1 Link 4, but if your opponent's already set up, the step where you would activate Appalachia, or I should say if your opponent went first and already set up, at the step where you activate Appalachia, you can get Access Code instead, and then just blow up your opponent's board before you keep comboing. Okay, wow, so I actually talked a bit more about the deck than I thought I would. So other options for the main deck that I am currently considering, still have to play test a bit, still have to see if I like them or not, is instead of Sekka's Light, running some utility spell cards, namely Called by the Grave. Very, very good in this deck, again, because this deck is very, very susceptible to Maxx. This deck can also be extremely susceptible to back row, particularly Eldritch's Floodgates, like Skill Drain, or Vanity's Emptiness, or like a Gozen or something. That can be particularly troubling for this deck because, as you can see, we don't really have any spell trap removal, so that is a weakness of this deck. This iteration in particular pretty much has like good to great matchups against just about anything, but it's got an awful Eldritch matchup. So here early in the season, where more people are playing Eldritch, it might not be as good to run this variant. Might want to run, like, again, I'm kind of debating dropping the Sekka's Light and then like a Nibiru or maybe something else for like 2 Twin Twister, 2 Call By. If you play Adamancipator and you have an opinion on that, I'd love to hear it. I'm always looking for suggestions for all of my decks, but especially ones that I'm still in the testing process of, like Adamancipators here. I would love to hear from players who are more experienced with the deck about what you think about the build, what you think about Sekka's Light versus Called By. I've seen some people use Sekka's Light and Called By, so that could be a potential thing you do. I don't know what people think about that either, but alright, that's enough about the actual list itself. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of these games from when I was practicing the deck here. Okay, so we've got the first game here. This is going to be against, let me just reference my notes here real quick. This should be the Zodiac variant, I believe. Yes. So we're going to start off with the Rocksies here and then special summon the Researcher in order to get our plays started here. We like normal summoning the Rocksies here because Rocksies by itself can already set up a decent amount of plays, so I don't mind using my normal summon this early for that. Unfortunately, we whiff with the Researcher, which is It doesn't happen too often, but can occasionally happen, so that's going to be too bad. We can still send the Rocksies away for Meow Meow Moo, banish the Maxi, we get to draw Sekka's Light, which will extend us more a bit. We then use the droplets we get off Rocksies to go into Dodo Doodle Doo, and then use the droplets effect, or Dropsies rather, to summon a new Rocksies. So that's kind of the power of the Prank-Kids engine in play there. It just basically gets you a free link to, as well as a cycle in hand. So speaking of cycles, we also drew a Block Dragon here, which is really, really nice. We're going to activate Halqifibrax, but our opponent's got an Ash for it. So between whiffing on the Researcher Mill, or the Researcher Excavate, and then not getting this O-Lion, we're not going to be able to do a whole lot more here. I'm going to special summon the Block Dragon and then go for an Appalachia, just so I can get my Block Dragon searches in. But since I already have the... or have used the Researcher special summon, I can't actually get this Seeker on board, because yeah, I'm going to special summon Gigantes, but like I said, I already used the Researcher special summon, and Adamancipator Seeker needs an Adamancipator monster to be special summoned, so yeah, it's too bad. I could have potentially gone into, well, not potentially there, but you know, had I been able to special summon Researcher, I could have summoned a Seeker, got another Excavate, gone into a Borreload Savage, would have been a lot better, but oh well, it happens. So yeah, as we can see, our opponent is playing some sort of variant of Zodiac. So this is pretty bad news for me because it's pretty obvious. It's pretty obvious they're about to set up for a Borbo into a Zeus play here, which of course they're going to be doing right now. So I do have an Appalachia, and I've got the Koa'ki Mirror Guardians. So if I normal summon a Guardian during my opponent's turn, I'm thinking I can force them to use all of their Zeus's materials, and that'll be nice. And they'll also get a destruction on the Zeus as well. But I don't have high hopes for keeping my board here. Yeah, like I said, I'm going to normal summon the Guardian, so now I can at least guarantee that I can get rid of the Zeus at this point. Or at least force it to use all of its materials. I'm going to special summon this Researcher and go for an Excavate. Because I want to see if I can get another negate on the board. Because if I can get one more negate on the board, I can actually live through this Zeus here. So yeah, we whiff again on the Researcher. We're getting pretty unlucky in this game, but even despite all that, we are still having plenty of plays here. We're going to get Raptite here, and Raptite is definitely not going to whiff this time, which is nice. Even though we got the Analyzer, I'm actually going to go for the Doki Doki here, and the reason is so that I can discard Guardian and summon a second Koa'ki Mirror Guardian. Now that I've got the two Koa'ki Mirror Guardian and the Appalachia, I can actually negate all three of Zeus's procs, so I can safely go into Borreload Savage Dragon here. Because yeah, I knew my opponent would respond with Zeus as soon as I summoned Borreload and activated its effect, but as you can see, we'll negate the first one with Appalachia, they'll chain again, we'll respond with Guardian, they'll chain a third time, and then we'll respond with Guardian. So their Zeus will be gone, and we get to keep our entire board. Very, very nice for us here. And on top of that, we're also actually going to get to special summon the Supplier, which means we can go into further plays. We can get the Union Carrier and put the Buster Dragon Sword thing. I never know. That card just, I don't know, it's just words to me. That card's name is just a bunch of words in a row. But we can put that on Borreload Savage Dragon here. Yep, so as you can see, like I said, we ended up with our board surviving. We also still have two Appalachia negates and now an Omni negate from Borreload Savage Dragon as well. Do note that Borreload Savage Dragon's negate is once per turn, so even if you have multiple counters, you can only use one counter per turn. That's why you're fine with the Link 2 only putting like 2 counters on it, because you typically only need to negate like once, if that, with Borreload before the game is over. Opponent's got a Harpy's Feather Duster. I'm obviously going to Borreload because I don't want my Buster Dragon Sword to go to the graveyard. And they're going to summon a Kairos. They'll attack into our Appalachia to secure the game for us there. So, yep, that's a good way of showing how you can like play through negates, still end up with a decent board, and how you can play through. You see, we played through a 6 material Zeus and didn't even end up losing our board. So, yeah, very cool game to show off there. Let's go ahead and look at the next one. Okay, next game here. This one is going to be against a Tri-Brigade Zodiac, not just a straight-up Zodiac deck. And you see, we got a fairly good opening hand here. Our opponent's going first. We do have a Nibiru, which is nice. So they're gonna Tenyi and get a Fractal. So of course, you know, me playing Trizu, I pretty much know what's coming here. Although I do have a Nibiru, which is really nice. So at the very least, I can Nibiru before they can get in like the 3-material Appalachia, depending on what line they go for, of course. But they actually kind of go for a really weird line that I'm not familiar with at all. They're going to start with some... They search out the Karos here, but then they go for a Ram, and then they Trident to blow up their own Tenyi. They send the Trident away for a Chakanane, and then they're going to bring it back, and they're basically going to end up making a Farajit here. But then not do anything with it? I'm not really sure what's going on with my opponent's line here. Well, the reason I imagine they didn't do anything with the Farajit is because they realized they saw my Nibiru proccing, and they didn't want to play into it, so... Yeah, during the end of their main phase, I am going to Nibiru just to get rid of the Farajit and put a token out. I honestly didn't need to do that, but I figured I'd rather have the Nibiru on the board than in my hand, so we'll just go ahead and do it that way. My opponent's got 2 back row. I'm pretty convinced one of them is Revolt. So, you notice here, actually, before we keep going into the combo, you notice the first thing I did was normal summon Koa'ki Mirror Guardian, and the reason that I did that is because I want to set up the monster effect negate against a potential hand trap, or if my opponent does Revolt, and let's say they don't chain block right, and they put Omen at the end, I can potentially negate Omen with Guardian, so... Guardian, you want to set up as early as possible, if ever possible, so that's why I started by normal summoning it. Then we can special Researcher, and then since we have Researcher out, we're going to be able to special the Seeker as well. We'll begin first with the Researcher's Excavation here. And you see, we whiffed on it. That's 3 in a row. We're not having good luck with these Researchers' Excavations, but the Seeker Excavation, as you can see, we have already revealed the Doki Doki, as well as a couple of Suppliers, so that's always nice. We're going to get the Doki Doki here because I have a Rocksies in my hand, and I'd like to set up a Rocksies on board, ideally, if possible, to start some combos with. I'm going to activate my Crystron, but it's going to get negated with Imperm, so no O-Line for me once again in this game, just like the last one, but it's not really that big of a deal, honestly. I'm going to activate Doki Doki's effect here. Oh, I'm going to get Analyzer. Sorry, I'm not going to get Roxy's with the Doki Doki. I'm going to get Analyzer here for another Excavation, and also for some Synchro plays. Since Analyzer is a level 4 tuner, I can tune it with the Doki Doki to go into the level 6 Raptite here. And the Raptite can get an Excavate. I think, did I whiff with that Analyzer Excavation too? Wow, I'm really not having the best of luck with these Excavations, but as you can see, you don't even need to hit every Excavation to combo all the time. This one we do hit, we get a Supplier, so we can add a Guardian, which is nice. So I'm going to make a bit of a risky play here. My opponent hasn't played a hand trap or anything yet. I mean, I have the Guardian out, so that might be why they have it, but I decided to go for the Gallant Granite because I really need the Block Dragon to keep my plays going here, so... I'm like, okay, we'll risk it for a second here. I'll make the Block Dragon, or I'll use the Guardian to make the Gallant, the Gallant Granite, and then I'll go for the Block Dragon, and then we'll go into Appalachia from there. Our opponent's going to Called by the Block Dragon to prevent the search, which is slightly annoying, but not that huge of a deal. We already have the Appalachia up, and we can go ahead and synchro into Borreload. Savage Dragon. So once again, you can see, even though we were prevented from getting the full combo, we still set up far more than enough to negate our opponent with, 3 monster effect negates, and then, 1 Omni effect negate each turn for at least 2 turns. It's pretty absurd. By Omni negate, what I mean by that, by the way, is it can negate any card or effect. So it doesn't have to be a monster or a spell or trap, doesn't have to be a card activation, doesn't have to be an effect. It can be anything. Borreload can negate it. So opponent's going to summon Karos. We're going to negate it with Appalachia to prevent them from setting up. They have no other recourse, so they're just going to pass here. I'm just going to normal summon the Koa'ki Mirror Guardian, attack over the Karos with the Guardian, and then smack my opponent with the Borreload Savage Dragon here to end the game. Alright, so yeah, just another nice example of how we can play through negates and get a win there. Let's go ahead and move on to the next game. Okay, so this game is going to be a much shorter example, but it is still a good one because it illustrates a point I want to make about how important Koa'ki Mirror Guardian is. So first of all, like, look at this hand. This hand is actually phenomenal. I mean, the O-Lion in hand isn't ideal, but opening one of each Seeker, Researcher, and Analyzer is, like, perfect. So we're going to start by normal summoning the Analyzer here. Our opponent is going to Ash it, which is a little bit annoying, but we still have the Seeker and Researcher as well, so we're not too fussed by this getting negated here. We're going to start by special summoning Seeker, since it's a little bit more difficult to summon. We'll get the Excavation here, and let's see. We reveal Doki Doki, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to use Doki Doki, once again, like in that other game, to discard a Koa'ki Mirror Guardian to summon a Koa'ki Mirror Guardian. And the reason I'm doing that is that because I don't want to get Nibiru'd, because during this point, my opponent wasn't revealing any hand traps at this point. I kind of wish this could have been a live game, honestly, because it would have been a great thing to illustrate, but my opponent wasn't revealing like that they had any hand traps when I was doing these effects, but I wanted to get Koa'ki Mirror Guardian out anyway, again, in case a Nibiru potentially came down. So here we're going to synchro our Analyzer and Doki Doki, since we've already used both into a Raptite. And hey, sure enough, look who showed up to the party. It's Nibiru. Good thing we got our Koa'ki Mirror Guardian, so now we can respond with that to negate and destroy our opponent's Nibiru. And now we can get our Researcher onto the board and get an Excavate, since we already obviously have rock monsters in play. We reveal a Supplier, so that's good. We can keep extending with our plays, and our opponent's just going to concede. So I wanted to, again, use that game to illustrate why Koa'ki Mirror Guardian is so important in this deck. You see, in those early parts of the combo, like I mentioned, before we have Appalachia on the board, we need something to protect us from stuff like Nibiru, stuff like, you know, a potential Ash that could stop our combos. Again, if you've got, like, if you opened, like, Koa'ki Mirror Guardian, Adamancipator Researcher, Adamancipator Seeker, you can go, you know, normal summon Guardian, special Seeker, special Researcher, special Seeker, and then boom. Now, even when you do that for a special summon and try to Excavate, you can still Koa'ki Mirror Guardian if your opponent's got a Maxx C. So, yep, very, very important card to have against our opponent's hand traps. We've got one more game. Let's go ahead and jump right into that before we get to the end of the video here. Okay, last duel of the video here. And we actually got like what I would consider to be a kind of mediocre hand. We are going second, though we do open Maxx C and Nibiru, so it's a good going second hand. And as you can see, we're playing against Eldritch, which is, again, as I mentioned earlier, this deck's worst matchup by far. We're going to Maxx C in response to this Black Awakening for sure, because it's one of the few times we get to Maxx C. And even though Nibiru is good opening when you are going second, it's obviously going to be pretty useless in this particular matchup. So, and we draw Koa'ki Mirror Guardian. Again, not a fantastic draw here, but we do get a Researcher, so that's always nice. We're going to start with Adahara, and then I'm going to normal summon the Guardian, as I mentioned earlier, to protect against hand traps potentially. And sure enough, hey, look what we ran into, a hand trap, as soon as I activate Researcher. So I'm definitely going to Guardian the Ash, because I want my Researcher to resolve here. The other nice thing is that since the Guardian left the field, we can special summon the Koa'ki Mirror Supplier after this Excavation here. And we reveal our Rocksies, which is always one of the ones we like to reveal most, and Doki Doki, but we're going to go for Rocksies here. So we get the add with the Supplier, not that we need it, but it's still nice. As always with the Rocksies, we're going to go into the Prank-Kids play, as I like to call it, where you Rocksies for Meow Meow Moo, then banish to draw, and then summon a Dropsies. We drew the Dropsies, which is really unlucky, but it happens, whatever. It's not a big deal. Yep, then we go the Droplets and Meow Meow Moo into Dodo Doodle Doo, use the Dropsies to get another Rocksies, so we're back where we started, except with a free Link 2 on the board. Yep, then I'm going to go into Halkif-Brax here with the Adahara. It's one reason why I like having the Adahara, is because you can easily go into that. We actually finally get to some of the O-Lion for a change, and since my opponent went first, I'm going to not go into Appalachia, rather instead I'm going to go into Axis Code Talker here. Yeah, I figured the first one my opponent set was probably going to be the Gold Land Forever, so that's what I target first. And sure enough, it was. We can blow up both of them pretty easily by just discarding some of our links there. And then as we continue our plays, our opponent's going to concede as they realize we're able to go off uninhibited, and we're likely going to be able to go for game that turn. Yeah, I was going to go into the Dragite, bounce the Eldelich, and then just pretty much attack for game pretty soon after this point. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed those example games. Let's go ahead and, as always, take one final look at the deck before we end the video. Okay guys, as always, I want to thank you so much for watching, especially to the end of the video. Also, like I mentioned a little bit earlier in the video, do be on the lookout because I plan on including a follow-up video probably tomorrow or very shortly after this video is released that kind of shows. Again, it won't be a combo guide per se, in that it won't be, hey, you start with these specific cards, you end with this specific board, but I'm going to show you how to look for plays and just the kind of plays that you can do with the Adamancipator deck and the engine, and just all the different stuff we can end on. Like, we'll show an ideal board, and then we'll show some maybe other sideboards. I don't know, we'll figure it out when we get to that video, but do be on the lookout for that. In the meantime, like I said, thank you for watching, and I especially appreciate it if you are commenting and subscribing. Don't feel like you have to, but if you are, that really just makes my day, and I love interacting with you guys in the comments. So if you've got any questions for me about the build, or the channel, or videos, or anything, feel free to ask, and yeah, there's a decent chance I might be able to respond to you. So yep, that is going to do it for today. Like I said, I appreciate you watching. Without further ado, this is HexLex, signing out. I hope you have a fantastic day.